5 home studio must-haves that you just don't think about until you get started. So when you're starting out, the first bits of gear that you think about purchasing are all the obvious things: headphones, monitors, audio interfaces, microphones. If you want to know my top picks of those items of gear, then check out my free gear guide. You can download it from the link below this video. But this video today is all about those home studio essential gear items that before you set up your home studio, you would never have thought of and wouldn't have realized they would have been a must-have in your home studio. I want to share with you what I use, what I bought, how I use it. Let's dive straight in. So first up, let's enter the exciting world of USB port hubs. Okay, not particularly exciting, but very useful and well recommended in your home studio, because as your studio grows, you're going to be needing more USB ports. Now, I wouldn't necessarily recommend one of these cheaper ones from Amazon, this one, because this one let me down pretty quickly and the company ended up sending me a spare. But I bought one from a company called Anchor, which if you go online, you'll find gets strongly recommended. I've had mine from over a year. It's never let me down, whereas this one tended to drop out quite a lot, which quite a lot of the cheaper ones can do. Now, if you're using an iMac like me, the one behind me, you'll have, I think, 4 ports on the back of it, but because Apple are Apple and they want everything to look beautiful, they're really inaccessible. So having 7 extra USB ports is super handy. What I do is I run my backup drives direct into the iMac and everything else goes into my port hub. And that takes me nicely on to number 2, backup drives. Yeah, if you're working happily in your home studio today, and you don't have any means to back up your computer, whether that's with a physical hard drive or online, I want you to stop what you're doing and sort that out, because that's a lesson that I learned the hard way. I mean, it was a long time ago using a Port Studio, which was really tricky to back up anyway. But I lost about 5 months of working on an album on that Port Studio. It was heartbreaking. I only managed to retrieve about 2/3 of it by spending more money and going to a specialist. You just don't want to go there. I have 3 backup drives, all physical drives, 1 to back up the iMac and another 2 to store stuff so I don't have to store it on my iMac, and that's the other great reason for having extra drives. As you're working in your home studio, you're going to be building up your portfolio and your body of work. Perhaps you're getting involved with video. All this stuff is going to take up space on your computer, and you really want to get into the habit of putting those folders and files on a separate drive to store them on, so you keep plenty of space on your computer. They're not expensive and it's well worth the outlay. But ultimately, please, please, please do back up your body of work. I do not want that to happen to you. It's heartbreaking to lose work which you've spent so much time and effort on. So make sure fundamentally that you, at the very least, you back up your hard drive. Third on my list of home studio must-haves that you wouldn't have necessarily thought would be must-haves would be one of these. You can just about see on the desk behind me, and it's fader port from PreSonus. Any kind of fader and shortcut controller I would put on that list. Now, yes, you can get by, of course, with a mouse and using your keyboard, but when I started using fader port was when things really changed for me in terms of working with a DAW, and it put me back in touch with the music and mixing music. And I'm much happier when I'm using some kind of desk or controller. And for me, fader port is a really great mix between the two. I still work with the shortcuts, still work with the mouse, and actually use both at the same time. I know some people that use solely the fader port when they're mixing. I know a lot of people that have got bigger controllers that have got 4, 8, 12, 16 banks of faders. Whatever isn't, whatever suits your budget, I'd put on that list, because it makes mixing musical again in what is a very sterile, digital, screened off world. It gives you buttons and controls and faders that you can get your hands on. It's so much faster to work with once you know the shortcuts on the controller, and getting your hand on that fader really brings mixing to life, and it's much more like playing an instrument rather than adjusting controls with a mouse and a keyboard. And I've had a great experience with the PreSonus fader port. I've done a couple of reviews about that controller on this channel. I'm using it with Studio One and it works seamlessly. It's a great bit of gear and I strongly recommend one. Next up are these cables and adapters too. What I would say about cables is cheap price, buy twice. That's a lesson which you again can learn the hard way, or just do yourself a favor and buy yourself decent cabling, and you don't have to go super crazy. I know some cables can get really crazy expensive, insisting on like gold ends and all this kind of stuff. Just decent, at least mid-range cables. I use Van Dam cabling and Nutric adapters. This cable, for example, I've had for about 15 or 20 years. It's never let me down, and it's still going strong. And whilst we're talking about cables, let's bundle in stands as well. Speaker stands, mic stands, guitar stands, tripods, lighting stands. Oh my goodness, I've got so many stands which I never thought I would have needed in my home studio. One good thing I would say is that you can cut a bit of a corner with stands because they can get super expensive. I like really good quality mic stands, particularly when I'm performing. I'm well known for not wanting to use cheap mic stands when I am doing that, because I want a mic stand I can trust that's not going to start drooping when I'm singing halfway through my set. And of course you don't want that when you're recording too, but in your own home recording studio, you can look after your stands a lot better than when you're out on the road slinging stands into a car. So you can cut some corners as long as you're going to look after your mic stands. Bear in mind, if you've got heavy mics but you've got low quality or lightweight mic stands, they might not balance so well. And if budget's really tight, something like this desk clamp to put your microphone on is a great solution to get started. And finally, in your home studio, one thing that you certainly don't think about, I certainly never thought about, was furniture. Not until you start looking at professional bespoke made mix desks and you're kind of like, what? Well into 4 figures, super expensive. Now, my family ground live, I ground live, I work on the ground, and I must say, since I started doing that about 5-6 years ago, my back problems have been non-existent. I used to spend a lot of time sitting on an office chair, hunched over, and well, you know the drill. It's really uncomfortable on your back, and you know, it wasn't conducive to a happy lifestyle. The other thing I love about sitting on the ground is it's much more easier to grab instruments and stuff. So my furniture is really super inexpensive. I've got a table behind me which I kind of custom made to get it to the right height, and I got that from a discount charity store. It's like a vintage 1950s table, but that's what I'd say. Get out into those stores, get into those old secondhand furniture shops, get into those charity shops and grab yourself a bargain. Find something that's suitable, something that's interesting, a piece of furniture that speaks to you, that's comfortable. I definitely don't think you need to be going out and spending thousands and thousands of pounds on a really cool looking mixed desk. There is so much furniture out there already in the world, so go grab it and make your home studio your own. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please don't forget to like and subscribe. What were those home studio essentials that you didn't see coming that I may have missed off the list? Let me know in the comments box below. And if you want to know more about those home studio essentials, that's my Kali LP8 home studio monitors, you might be interested in this video.